So tonight, here is my plan. I'm going to say a bunch of things that I think are simply facts, and then I'm going to state some conservative opinions, and we'll see if I get arrested. So here we go. You ready? Here we go. Here. This is a fact. There are two, count them, two sexes. Two of them, not three. Not three, not nine, not infinite, not attack helicopter, two. I know, horrifying. Women are women, men are men. Men cannot become women because we don't live in a magical land in which men can become women or vice versa. Men who believe they are women are not biological women. Transgender women are not women. They are biological men with a mental disorder. There are two sexes. People with a Y chromosome are almost universally male. People without a Y chromosome are almost universally female. The only reason I say almost is because there do exist tiny variations in the population with gender disorders, sexual developmental disorders. These folks are intersex. They may have primary or secondary sexual characteristics that do not match the presence of a Y chromosome. These are called genetic abnormalities. And this does not mean that there is a third phantom sex that exists somewhere out there. Why? Because the promulgation of our entire species is based on sexual dimorphism. The fact that folks are willing to completely subsume biology under the rubric of political correctness is complete idiocy and anti-objective truth. And indeed, it turns out the transgender advocates claim that no evidence must actually be shown of intersex genetics. That's just a red herring. When they say that folks are transgender, they don't mean the person's intersex. They mean that a person who is fully biologically male, who believes that he is female, is actually a female. In order to achieve this particularly nonsensical combination, both in terms of biology and logic, transgender civil rights advocates create a new category from sex, and this they call gender. Now, gender, in this view, is about maleness or femaleness. That's an entirely subjective category, not linked to biology. It's a social construct. It's not linked in any way to biology. So, a couple of problems with this right off the bat, just in terms of internal logic. First off, stereotyping. Okay, so if you believe that there is a gendered female and a gendered male, you are assuming there are stereotypes that describe femininity and masculinity. Feminists would argue with that. Second, this actually presumes that there are only two genders, maleness and femaleness. And then there are mixes of those various characteristics. Okay, so if you believe that there are actually a bunch of different genders, or that gender exists on a spectrum, then you have to explain why there are 89 genders and not 7.1 billion genders. Because it turns out that every human being on planet Earth, all of them, have a different combination of feminine and masculine characteristics. So if gender is just your feminine or masculine characteristic, then you as an individual have your own individual gender, which means that the term gender has no meaning. Right? It's just called being a human. Most obviously, separating maleness or femaleness from genetic influence is scientifically illiterate. To say that a biological male is a gendered female is a basic contradiction in terms. A biological male may have feminine characteristics. He is still a biological male. We all know many men who are effeminate. We all know many women who are masculine. Okay, it does not mean that the woman is a man or that the man is a woman. That's just silly talk. Is transgenderism a condition from birth that is genetically encoded and unchangeable? Well, the argument would be, yes, people are born like this, they've lived like this all their lives. For a certain subset of the population, I'm sure that this condition is, in fact, genetic and unchanging. But let's remember that 80% of all children who supposedly have gender confusion grow out of it by the time they hit teenage years. Okay, is transgenderism a mental disorder? Of course it is, and it was defined as a mental disorder by the DSM until about 4 years ago, when politically correct doctors decided to switch the definition of mental disorder itself. So originally, a mental disorder was just anything that was obviously at odds with reality. And then they switched it to be anything at odds with reality that also causes depression. So in other words, if you're a schizophrenic, but it doesn't cause you some sort of difficulty in your everyday life, you are not mentally ill. Right? It's difficulty in your everyday life that we link to mental illness. Otherwise, you can believe that your head is a toaster, and if you're living a happy, fine life, then everything is hunky-dory and you don't have a mental disorder. Okay. Transgenderism, gender identity disorder, gender dysphoria, this is a form of body dysmorphia, just like anorexia or body identity integrity disorder. When you're anorexic, You are not fat. You believe you are fat. This does not mean you are a fat person. This means you are an anorexic. Okay, if you have body identity integrity disorder, you have two arms, you believe that you are a one-armed person in the body of a two-armed person. This does not mean you are actually a one-armed person in the body of a two-armed person. It means that you have a mental disorder. Now, the reason that I stress all of this is not to be mean. It is not. It's to be straight in our diagnosis. We would never treat any other disorder this way. My grandfather suffered from schizophrenia and bipolarity. He was treated with lithium. If society had simply decided, you know what, Nate, the radio is talking to you, the curtains are trying to strangle you, he would have been worse off. Not only that, when an entire society decides that it's going to redefine basic terminology about biological sex in order to make room for the sensitivity of certain numbers of people who are suffering, you are doing great damage to the fundamental distinctions that lie at the root of society. Plus, you're confusing kids. Okay, you don't actually get to teach my 4.5-year-old daughter that she can be a boy.